Good morning. I'm Mayor Tommy Roberts. Welcome back to the Mayor's Table. Once again this morning my guest is City Manager Rob Mays. Rob, occasionally we like to brief our citizens on what's happening at our airport here in Farmington. And I think our citizens appreciate that fact. They appreciate being updated occasionally on what's going on there. And we actually do have some news that we want to communicate. We think this is news that may be out in the community already. Mm-hmm. But recently we were notified by the management at Great Lakes Aviation that they intend to terminate service at our airport effective November 1st. And so we've been very active in responding to that message, active in communications with Great Lakes Management and discussions with them about what may be done to perpetuate service here. Why don't you set the stage for our viewers here this morning about those conversations?
Well, as you said, we have been very proactive. It goes back more than a decade of proactive work trying to recruit better and more air service to our airport. Lots of work has gone into that. We've had one carrier now for quite some time, Great Lakes Aviation. Things were going pretty well at our airport prior to 2013. We had about 16,000 enplanements a year, which was good for us. Then we were dealt a blow by the FAA regarding the change in requirements for first officers that really changed the airline industry, particularly the small regional airlines, and we've really been struggling ever since then. So kind of just to review that, in 2013, the FAA increased by over 6 times the required hours for a first officer.
From 250 to 1,500.
That's right, yeah. And as a result, there was an immediate pilot shortage, and the smaller airlines felt it the worst, and the smaller airports began to feel it the quickest. We were very involved working with our airline. You and I actually went to Washington, D.C. to lobby for in March of 2014, our airline filed a exemption request, a petition for an exemption to allow their 19-seater airplanes to continue. That did not pass, and so as a result, they ended up having to take 10 seats out of their planes. So they've been flying 19-seat airplanes with only 9 seats now for several years, and we've recognized that we've been really holding on for a thread. Because of that, there's no way they can continue to fly economically. Since 2013, with that change, we dropped to just over 1,400 enplanements, and so things have not been economically going well in spite of the fact that the service has improved in terms of reliability up there. We've been expecting for some time to get this news.
I think we have been hanging on by a thread for many years. In fact, Great Lakes Aviation has terminated service to over 20, probably close to 25 communities in the last 4 to 5 years. And we have held on. We've had a historically good relationship with Great Lakes Aviation. There have been times when we urged management at Great Lakes Aviation to focus on reliability, and we've had concerns that we have passed on from our community about reliability issues, because our citizens here in Farmington do have options. They can use Durango, they can use Albuquerque, or they could use Farmington. And we feel and have felt that it's important for us to have a functioning airport in order to support economic development activities here in our community. But this is a notification that doesn't come as a complete surprise to us. It's one that we hope we could avoid. What are we doing at our staff level, at your level, senior management level, in reaction to this notification? And I'm obviously familiar with what's going on in the context of those conversations, but why don't you relate the essence of what's being discussed today?
Well, let me step back and set a little context. There's essentially 2 kinds of airline service out there, subsidized and non-subsidized, whether that subsidy is coming from the federal government or local communities. The city of Farmington has never had subsidized air service. So all the air service that we've had throughout the years has carried itself on an economic basis. We've never had to subsidize airfares with taxpayer money. So that's the first thing to understand. And as this shift in the airline industry has taken place, more and more airlines are requiring subsidies. And that's exactly what Great Lakes is doing. They're pulling out of the non-subsidized markets like ours to go into what are called EAS, essential air service, which are federal subsidies and guaranteed revenues in other cities. We don't qualify, or historically have not qualified to be a federally subsidized market because, as you've mentioned, the fact is we have good air service options here between Durango and Albuquerque. So you fast forward to the next challenge, kind of as this has evolved over time. The Farmington Airport, through other changes the FAA made a number of years ago, by adding safety margins to the runway length, we no longer were able to fly larger airplanes, even regional jets in here. So we were unable to bring in airlines that flew larger airplanes. Durango then emerged as kind of the regional air hub because of their longer runway. Then you fast forward to the 2013 decision with the changes in pilot requirements. The shortage of pilots proliferated throughout the industry, thereby even putting more pressure on that the airlines have to move from small planes to bigger planes because 2 pilots can fly a big plane the same as they can fly a small one. So that's really put us in a difficult challenge. And so Great Lakes is essentially announced they're moving out of all of their non-subsidized, moving into federally subsidized markets where they can make money with these small planes still. So historically, we have done a lot to try to recruit and contact other airlines. I hear people say, why don't they get another airline? We want people to understand that we don't choose what airlines fly in and out of Farmington. Any airline is allowed to fly, and any airline is welcome here to fly. There's only a couple airlines, though, that fly aircraft that can function in our high altitude and in our short runway, making it very difficult. So you ask, what have we been doing? Well, again, all along we've stayed in contact. You and I have met. We went to D.C. to lobby on behalf of our airline. We've visited them, but we've had 3 conference calls since this announcement. We're working with management of Great Lakes. They're looking at options possibly to extend service, but I think we have to recognize that it may be very, very difficult to extend that in the long run. So we've also hired a consultant that specializes in helping to recruit airlines into small communities. This consultant will help us, number one, to apply for a grant. There are federal grants that will help fund the recruitment of a new airline into an area. There are several airline possibilities that could come here and fly that have expressed an interest, and there's some even potential of Great Lakes extending. The primary issue is pilot issues, and so we're even looking at things as creative as whether we could recruit pilots that have lived here. We have a long aviation history and pilot training history, and there are pilots that live in this area. Great Lakes is even open to the possibility that we could help identify a crew of pilots and they would create a mini domicile here to have pilots come. So if we could find pilots, they're willing to fly here. It really is a pilot issue.
So the bottom line is that we here at the City of Farmington are very much interested in seeing commercial air service perpetuated in our community, whether it be Great Lakes Aviation continuing to provide that service or a new provider. There are going to be many, many discussions that take place between now and November 1st and then beyond as well. If we were successful in getting Great Lakes Aviation to extend their service beyond November 1st for a period of time, it would enable us to do several things. We could extend the TSA presence in our community during that time. If we lose TSA, then it's a process to get them reassigned to an airport if in the event that we lost service and then we're able to find new service. So that's something we'd like to avoid if possible. So there's some options that we're looking at. We recognize the value of providing to our flying public a choice. Great Lakes providing service out of Farmington to the Denver metro area has been something that many of our citizens have taken advantage of over time. Great Lakes has competed on a price basis pretty well during that time. There are many times when you can find really good prices with Great Lakes Aviation, great fares when compared to those that can be found out of Durango. Other times Durango has better fares. It's just a matter of shopping those prices. But we realize the value of a commercial air service airport to a community, specifically to our community. I think one of the things that we need to continue to emphasize is that we have a strong general aviation community here in the Farmington area. And we have a number of private pilots and flyers, military type flights, a number of different ways that airports can be active. We derive revenue from fuel flowage charges and landing fees, and so we know the benefit, we know the value of an airport to our community. What do you think's going to be happening in the next 2 to 3 weeks?
Well, we are continuing conversations first with Great Lakes, and we brought on, again, a consultant to work with us on options to extend them, whether it's for a short period of time while we work on the potential of a new airline, or whether it's more indefinite. A big factor for Great Lakes will be if there's some movement with the FAA. With the new administration, there's been some indication that the FAA is relooking at this. This pilot shortage has moved far beyond affecting just airports the size of Farmington. It is now affecting many airlines, and this shortage is becoming really a crisis in the industry. And so finally the federal government is starting to pay a little bit more attention to it. So if Great Lakes could get some movement on allowing them to put those 10 seats back in the airplanes, that could make a big difference on whether they could fly economically. And so we'll continue those conversations. We're going to work on, again, getting this grant, which would be a good tool for helping us to recruit possible, even pretty creative options with Great Lakes, if not trying to get another airline in here. And there are a couple airlines that we've already had some initial contact with that are promising. But again, as you pointed out, it's very important for our listeners to understand that whether or not we have airline service or not, we still have a viable airport that's important to this community in many ways, from medical flights to shipping to commercial flights, or commercial business flights that come in. And a lot of things going up there that are very important.
Well, again, in summary, the decision to provide air service to a community is all about the financial aspects of that operation, the economics of that operation. And up until now, Great Lakes has seen Farmington as a positive in that context. I've often wondered how, but nevertheless, Great Lakes has continued to provide service here at a time when it was discontinuing service to many communities. And at this point in time, they're looking at other options where the economics might be better, and that is where those federal subsidies are provided to the essential air service designated communities. Be nice if Farmington could be designated that way, but it's not going to happen because, as you mentioned, there are options for air service that are pretty close to Farmington.
Yeah.
So I think that probably concludes our discussion this morning. Is there anything you'd like to add before we close?
No, just again that we'd want our viewers to know that we have been very proactive on this, very involved, and outside of subsidizing airline service with taxpayer dollars, again, we don't control who comes and flies here any more than we do other private sector businesses that come. And so if there was a market here, there would be an airline here, again, with the constraints of our runway and altitude.
Rob, thanks for being my guest this morning on the Mayor's Table, and we appreciate all of you viewing this segment of the Mayor's Table. We hope you learned something, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next Monday.